How is it rocking, Dwayne Nation? Stay here because we are just about to get underway. In the meantime, please like, comment, and subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. We put out weekly sports content, and we want to continue to build up Dwayne Nation and the brand that is Dwayne Sports. Thank you all, and enjoy. Welcome in, Dwayne Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo, and today is arguably the most exciting episode of the preseason before the NFL gets underway. We're talking league winners. We're talking our guys that we think you need on your rosters in order to win your fantasy football championship. With all that excitement, though, tell me how you're feeling, Genoa.
Dwayne Nation, Justin, I'm feeling so great, Justin. It is fantasy season. We're right in it. A couple weeks from kickoff. Justin, you and I are 48 hours away from drafting our teams. We're 24 hours away from drafting our uncle's league and our main league, 2 days away. I'm so excited, Justin. This is all prep. This is all so much fun. I'm doing great, man. I'm so excited to get into this episode because this is a video that you need to watch to win your fantasy championship and to brag to all your league mates and say, hey, I'm number one because I got one of these guys thanks to Dwayne Nation at Dwayne Sports. So, hey, I'm excited, Justin. I'm so excited to get into it.
Yeah, man. League Winners is such a fun episode to do. It's just guys that honestly, I mean, I've had the guys I've had a lot of love for that you're going to hear today. I've had those thoughts, this off season and even into training camp. Maybe some things have changed and whatnot, but these guys have some serious opportunity to. And I think some of them are really under the radar, as well as some of the near top guys that will put you over the top to win your fantasy football championships, because that's what we're here for. Let's make that money. Let's win some trophies, rings, belts, whatever you want. But yeah, let's dive into it. And I'll toss it off to you. Who is your quarterback league winner?
So Justin, this guy has not yet officially been named the starter for his team. But as we see the preseason, as we see of the quarterback he's battling with, we know that Justin Fields for the Pittsburgh Steelers is going to be the starter. I just feel like, why go with Russell? We kind of already seen what out of Russell Wilson. He had an ugly finish to his career in Seattle, gets traded to Denver. I mean, there has not been one great game that we can look back at Russell Wilson's career with the Broncos. We're like, oh, wow, Russell Wilson's 2 years in Denver was absolutely disastrous. I mean, I can't really think of something worse. So looking into what the Steelers have now, you got to go with Justin Fields, who I never understood, Justin, the hatred, the slander with Justin Fields when he was with the Bears. Obviously, they're the Bears. They're not going to be good. They haven't won the division since, 2018? So I think Justin Fields was the best thing to Chicago, the best quarterback they've had in so long since Jay Cutler. So I feel like now that Justin is with Pittsburgh, I feel like he has a nice start there. Looking at their depth chart here, you have Najee Harris in the backfield with Jalen Warren, who's a little dinged up to go into the season. I think he might miss week one. But looking overview, Jalen Warren is a great receiving back out of the backfield. And then you look at their, receivers. They have George Pickens, who we all love. They have Van Jefferson, who, was pretty good with the Rams. I think he can have somewhat of a revival with Pittsburgh. Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson out of, Michigan, who we talked about during, before the draft this year. We liked them, out of Michigan. And also Pratt Freiermuth, who could be a decent tight end. Obviously, I think they have Arthur Smith there as an offensive coordinator, so maybe things can kind of change up. And Justin, also, the rushing ability of Justin Fields cannot be, underlined there. He is a great rusher. You can make the argument that he's the second best rushing quarterback in the league behind Lamar Jackson, and that is great for fantasy owners. And so I do believe that the way Mike Tomlin and his coaching staff are headed, I think they're believing more into to Justin Fields than Russell Wilson. And I believe that they should go this route. I feel like Russell Wilson doesn't necessarily fit all that well with the Steelers. I do think that if they start that week one, I just think there's going to be a lot of just mishaps and issues. I do believe that they should just keep Russell there as a quarterback too, and maybe look to trade him. I'm not sure what are the rules on his contract to trade him. But Justin, with Fields there, I just feel like the rushing ability is there. I feel like he could get the ball to George Pickens. I mean, hey, DJ Moore had a great season last year with Justin Fields, and I see that replicating with George Pickens. And also, Cole Kmet had a couple great games
Yeah.
with Fields, and I think I can transition with Pat Fryermuth there, who's a solid tight end. And so, I love Justin Fields, and obviously, for the first couple weeks, he could struggle. They might have Russell maybe start. I'm not really sure. I believe that they're gonna go forward with Justin Fields, but hey, this episode is league winners, Justin, and when we get to week 9, week 10, week 11, I do see Justin Fields taking over and shining bright. And you got to remember, Justin, this division is loaded with the MVP, with Joe Burrow, with the Browns, who still made the playoffs without Deshaun Watson. The Steelers are going to need to be able to provide a high-quality, fast-paced offense, and I believe the best chance goes with Justin Fields.
I think that's a wonderful, surprising, shocking, but I love it pick. I mean, people are saying maybe Russell Wilson. That's kind of been the talk of the offseason, that he would be the starter. But Justin Fields wanted to go to Pittsburgh for a reason. You go to a system with Arthur Smith where he values a rushing quarterback. And as you mentioned, you can't understate that rushing upside for Justin Fields in fantasy football. If you have that rushing capability, you're going to be a quarterback one. I mean, the last 2 years, Justin Fields, by points per game, was a quarterback one in Chicago. Now he goes to a situation where he's got a very solid offensive line. They've really improved over the last 2 years. A really good rushing attack. George Pickens, Pat Fryermuth is, to me, more than a solid tight end. He's been doing great with not a lot of talent, and having Kenny Pickett throw him the football, and still was like a low-end tight end one. So Justin Fields, I think I'm really excited about that. He has the upside that many quarterbacks don't. I mean, stash him on your rosters at the end of your drafts. Why not? Russell Wilson is not long for this team and is not long for the starting position. He was injured during this preseason for some portion of it, so Fields has some rapport with the starting offense. And we've seen it in preseason. I haven't heard any talks about Russell Wilson and training camp of being impressive, but I've heard it on the flip side for Justin Fields that he's been really good. So I really like that pick, and I love it. We just started off with an absolute cannon shot. That was awesome. So moving to my quarterback. My quarterback is another has very good rushing abilities on an offense that should be in games where they have to throw it all the time because of their porous defense. I'm talking about Kyler Murray for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, this guy has tended to some injuries over the last few years. Obviously, in 2022, he had the ACL injury, which spilled into 2023. Now he's coming off a full year, or now it will be almost 2 years, a year and a half, not off of the ACL surgery, and he's in an offense now that has Marvin Harrison Jr. They add Zay Jones, another year of Michael Wilson. They got Trey McBride. People think they don't have a lot of talent. They have tons. They got James Conner and Trey Benson out of the backfield. Their offensive line is pretty solid. And looking at the Cardinals, looking at the beginning of last year, you saw them start with Josh Dobbs, right? And we were all really down, like, this is not going to work out. This offense is going to be really bad. Obviously, this team's not going to win many games. And they didn't win many games, but they surprised a lot of teams. They were in many games for the first 8 weeks before they traded away Josh Dobbs. And that just has me excited. That was just the beginning of this Jonathan Gannon, football team. And in looking at that, I was looking at Josh Dobbs. How did he do through that first half of the season? He was the quarterback 12. Quarterback 12 would have made him a quarterback 1 in 12-team fantasy leagues. That was better than Jordan Love through the first 12 weeks, Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, Matthew Stafford, better than all those guys. So that's Dobbs doing this. Kyler Murray offers so much more upside than what Josh Dobbs is even capable of. He has the rushing upside. He still has a cannon, and he's throwing now to the best receiver in this 2024 class, arguably a top 10 wide receiver already in the NFL based on what we've seen. Obviously, he's got the lineage of Marvin Harrison, and that just has me so excited. And looking at Kyler Murray, people are, they are worried about the injury, but when this guy is on the field, he has been a quarterback 1 in every season. Look at this. In 2019, he started the full season, was the quarterback 7. In 2020, he was the quarterback 2. We keep moving. Yes, 2021, 2022, and 2023 all had injury riddled seasons. Obviously, it ended his 2022 in, I believe, like week 13 or 14 in 2022, and then 2023 he returned around the similar time. But in those weeks he played in those seasons, quarterback 9, quarterback 6, quarterback 4. So he's continuing to be a quarterback 1 when he's on the field. He comes into the season healthy. Jonathan Gannon has preached that Kyler has increased his leadership, has really improved on his on the field and off the field kind of work. And that just has me super excited. And then last thing I mentioned briefly at the beginning of my rant was that the Arizona Cardinals defense was the lowest rated defense in 2023. They're going to need to throw the rock. James Conner can catch the ball. All those receivers are really capable. We saw Zay Jones be pretty capable in Jacksonville the last few seasons. So that has me with Kyler Murray as my league winner, a guy that you can wait on comparatively to those top 5 guys, even top 6 guys. So that's why I got Kyler Murray.
Yeah, no, Justin, I love it. Here's the thing with Kyler Murray. Yes, you were mentioned that he's going to be almost 2 years. I do believe he tore his ACL, I would say, the December time in the 2022 season, a little bit later in that year. He came back, I would say it was probably like week 11-ish. He had somewhat of a tough schedule. He had his home game against Atlanta, which was okay. He did pretty decently. Goes to Houston. He had to play the Rams. He had to go to Pittsburgh. He did have to play the eventual NFC champion 49ers. He had to go to Chicago. But hey, I remember I was with you this week, Justin. I remember my great aunt Nicole was a little upset losing to the Arizona Cardinals. I was with you, and Kyler had a fantastic game in Philly. He had 3 touchdowns. He had pretty good, decent endings to the season. But hey, he did not have Marvin Harrison Jr. yet, Justin, which is now going to boost his stock there, which is very exciting. Here's one thing, though, that slightly worries me about, the Cardinals is their other weapons. Who else can they get involved? They do have Marvin Harrison Jr. They do have McBride. But you mentioned Michael Wilson, who's an interesting guy to look at, and Greg Dortch, who had some flashes in 2022. Greg Dortch, yeah. So I don't know. I do like it. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do with the running game. James Conner is getting a little bit up there in age, so maybe a guy like Trey Benson can get up there. And so I do love the rushing upside. And you've mentioned Jonathan Gannon, who comes from that Sirianni, Frank Reich tree. Obviously, we love what Frank Steichen is doing in Indianapolis. They're all kind of from that same tree with the rushing quarterbacks. They all have a rushing quarterback. Sirianni has Hurts. Steichen has AR. And hey, Gannon has Kyler Murray. So it's very exciting to see what they can do together in their first full year together. You mentioned what Josh Dobbs was able to do last year. I do remember that he had a pretty good upset against the Dallas Cowboys, I would say about week 3 or week 4. And that was a great defense through those first couple weeks in the season. The Cowboys, they're probably, you can make the argument from weeks 1 to like week 6, they were the best defense in the NFL. We're like, oh my goodness, this defense might be historic. Josh Dobbs goes out there and shreds them up. And literally, I think he put about 28 to 30 points on them. And that makes me excited for what Jonathan Gannon and Kyler Murray can do together. So very excited. I'm just very interested to see how they can develop other wide receivers around Marvin Harrison. So that way it can take a little bit more pressure off the rookie receiver. You mentioned Zay Jones. I like Zay Jones. He had some good years. And hey, Michael Wilson can turn to something. So maybe Michael Wilson can be a waiver wire week 1 or 2 pickup. Yeah. Could he be that next Puka pickup? Who knows? So yeah, I love Kyler Murray. He's going to be healthy going into this year. I like the Cardinals to be somewhat of a 7 to 9 win team. Kind of starts off a little slow, but by week 4 to week 7, they're kind of upsetting teams. Like, oh wow, we didn't know the Cardinals had it like that. So definitely like Kyler Murray there, Justin. And hey, I think that's a sleeper league winner pick. I like it.
Yeah, and last thing before I give it back to you, Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator for the Cardinals. Just wait 1 year, maybe 2 years, and he will be getting head coaching offers. I've loved what I've seen, his play calling and everything like that. Arizona's looking good for this year and next year, and then we'll see. Hopefully they can keep Drew Petzing around. But yeah, all right, go ahead with your running back league winner.
Oh, Justin, at the end of last episodes of our bust, I mentioned that there's a running back that I want to talk about so bad, and I'm so glad, Justin, I have the opportunity. And that is Devon Achane for the Miami Dolphins. Yes, he is a former Texas A&M Aggie. Justin, go ahead and flash that A&M logo on your shirt. He is a former Aggie. Justin, we had the privilege to see him in a couple games in the
Mm-hmm.
past. And Justin, last month, if you would have asked me about Devon Achane, I would have been real down. But once I started doing research, once I started to review film of last year and see highlights, there is no doubt that this guy is a lightning bolt out of the backfield. And there is only one thing that is holding him back, Justin. Yes, he has an injury, Nick, but that is the touchdowns leader of last year, and that is Raheem Mostert. And now, Justin, looking at Raheem Mostert, he is 32 now. He's been in the league for a while. Mostert himself has had an injury-prone history when he was with the 49ers, and that's something to consider going into this year with the running back position, Justin. It is always a young man's game, and I feel like Achane is just eyeing that RB1 position, Justin. Looking at what Achane was last year, he only played 11 games. I would say 2 to 3 of those games was him kind of getting back on his feet while Mostert was shining. But look at these stats, Justin. From week 3 to 5, he was no doubt the RB1. He had 800 yards and 8 touchdowns with like barely 10 games played. And that dynamic offense that is the Miami Dolphins. We mentioned Mostert led the league in rushing touchdowns, was the alpha in that running back. The fact that that Achane was able to get those stats there as the RB2, as the rookie with all those injuries, it actually makes me feel good of going to draft Achane this year. I feel like the Miami offense is developed a little bit better. I know that they're not going to be too reliant on Tyreek Hill in the passing game, which makes me believe they're going to be rushing the football a little bit more. And I mean, just the eye test, Justin. I mean, looking at the way he rushes the ball, I mean, he had this game against Denver last year. Obviously, that was a blowout. I mean, he was just shining. And weeks 3 to 5 is just something that I just hold dear to my heart. And I know that as his second year looms around, he's going to eye stats just like that all season long. He is no doubt going to be a league winner. I don't really feel like Raheem Mostert is going to be able to make it to the end of, and going into the playoffs, the fantasy playoffs, as the starting running back. I just feel like he has so much mileage. His age is up there. And like I mentioned, he's had previous injuries, and I do think that's going to open the opportunity for Achane. And Justin, here's something that I love too. Not only is Achane going to be great rushing the ball, he's going to be great catching the ball.
Yeah.
By the end of the year, there's going to be, defensive strategies to stop Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle. They did bring in Jonnu Smith, who I think is going to be pretty good there in that offense. Mm-hmm. I think that Achane is due for a RB1 breakout year. And Justin, if your opponent has Achane in the fantasy playoffs, I am biting my nails. I am nervous because this guy, he's had 200 yards in the game before. Why don't we think we can have? What's the reason why we don't think he can have it again? So I do think that Achane is due for RB1 season. I do know that he's had some injuries. Last year he had 2. He missed about 5 or 6 games. But Justin, in his collegiate career with the Aggies, he hardly ever had injuries, Justin, as we were familiar with him. So I think that this year, I don't think he'll have any injuries. I hope not. And if he is healthy from week 1 all the way to the end of the season, Justin, I believe he's going to be the RB1 of the season. Not Bijan, not McCaffrey, not even Breece Hall. I think that Achane is due for a massive breakout. Should I say historic, Justin? Historic RB1 season. I am feeling so good about Achane this year. In fact, I think later I might hop on Madden and just kill everybody I can with Achane, man. This guy is a video game human form this year. And as far as his ADP, I mean, he's going pretty early there. He's the RB10 ADP, which is a little low for someone I believe in so much. But I think next year, Justin, we're looking at him as a top 3 fantasy pick.
Yeah, wow. Achane, as you mentioned, those that 3-week span where he was by far the RB1. He averaged 7 more points than the next running back. And that shows his ceiling. That shows what he's capable of. And how can you not want to buy into somebody who's capable of leading all running backs in points, probably all players in points?
Yeah.
He was phenomenal. His yards per carry was by far the largest, especially at the amount of carries he got. And you mentioned 800 yards, 8 touchdowns in 10 games. He's on a path to, if he's healthy, yes, he did, hit a few injuries in his rookie year, which can be concerning. But it wasn't like that for him at Texas A&M. I saw it firsthand. That was not really the case. little injuries here and there, but that's what football is.
Yeah.
But those major injuries that caused him to miss multiple weeks, that's not like him. He just got a little unlucky, and I think a lot of people are reading into that a little too much. So I really like that Achane pick. Hopefully I can snipe him from you at some point in our draft this weekend. But
Ooh.
yeah, okay.
Be on the lookout for you.
I know, right? Hopefully I don't want to be picking next to you. That would be awful.
Oh man.
But okay, moving to my running back pick. I have a guy going in a similar range as Devon, but a guy who is part of the best team in football that runs angry, will get all the touches on the ground this year. I'm very certain of it, and it's Isiah Pacheco for the Kansas City Chiefs. This guy always gets 4 to 5 yards of carry. I swear, he as I said, he runs angry. Obviously, he looks like he's like mad at the ground. But he's just a phenomenal running back. That is, CEH was there in that offense, Jerick McKinnon, and he's already hopped them as a 7th round rookie a couple years ago. He's a 2-time world champ since he's been in the league. Hasn't lost a season.
Yeah.
And just looking at him, I mean, people are worried. Hey, he got no catches, and he never gets catches. He's only a runner on the ground. Pacheco had 44 catches in 2023, and we think he doesn't get a lot of catches. Now they don't have Jerick McKinnon. They only have CEH around, which I'd argue Pacheco is already a better receiver out of the backfield. And then they have a bunch of unproven 7th round, 6th round rookies, undrafted players, and like Deneric Prince and that guy last night, Croswell, had a really good run.
Yeah.
But Pacheco is just he's been such a key piece for this Kansas City offense, and he'll never receive a stack box in his life because they have Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, and Xavier Worthy. So their offense is really expanded, which will leave Pacheco a lot of space early in the offense. They just re-signed Creed Humphrey to an extension. And so they have that O-line locked up. They have great coaching. Andy Reid has talked about how he's going to be a 3-down back this year. And I think why not? He was an RB2 last season, going in the early to mid 3rd round. I think that's an absolute steal, and that's why I have Pacheco as my league winner.
No, Justin, that is a great pick. Justin, looking at this depth chart, you did mention that there's no one there that could really take over for Pacheco. You mentioned that Pacheco is a 7th round pick. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a 1st round pick. And the fact that the past 2 years it's been all Pacheco for their 2 Super Bowl runs, I mean, that should tell you something. I don't really think that Pacheco has anybody looking, to take his spot there. You mentioned Deneric Prince. You mentioned the guy from last night who's not currently on the active roster. Obviously, cuts are probably going to be made here in the next couple days since the Chiefs, I think that's their last preseason game. And so Pacheco, he is an angry runner, Justin, and that's definitely going to, a lot of defenses are thinking, oh, Mahomes is going to do something weird, some shovel pass to Kelce, something. No, they're going to be going at the goal line with, Pacheco. And towards the end of the year, I've mentioned in the past that, I've been very consistent with this take that Mahomes is going to win the regular season and NFL MVP. So I feel like once we get to the league winners part, once we get to the fantasy playoffs, I do think they're going to be relying a lot on Pacheco because I think that, towards the end, they're going to kind of wind down on the passing. They're kind of closing to win that division around week 15 to week 16. So I feel like there's going to be a Pacheco breakout game in one of those playoff games where he goes off for 130 rushing yards, 2 to 3 touchdowns. And he's going to have an angry running season. It feels like any defender in his way, Pacheco's looking at him as an enemy. I mean, this guy probably took my lunch in middle school or something. So Pacheco is looking to hurt somebody every single play. I love that so much, Justin. Definitely his ADP is a little bit questionable. I've had a lot of conversations with people. I think it was actually your dad who was kind of like not on board with him.
Right.
And then I think that there's some people that are on board with him, but you can make the argument that he is on the best offense in the league. They just extended their center, who's been an all-pro, probably one of the best centers in the league, probably is the best center in the league now that, Jason Kelce has retired. And so definitely this O-line is well established. I mean, it's unbelievable the way they've been able to get a great offensive lineup around Patrick Mahomes. And that's going to open a lot of the running game. So I do like that a lot. I do think that the back half of the season, Pacheco could definitely take off.
And you mentioned, they're the best team in football, right? They have one of the best offenses in football. they're going to be in lead. They're going to be leading games. We don't have to, like, if I, argue, like, I like, a guy like Devin Singletary, just say I like him, for the Giants. The opportunities he's going to get in the red zone is going to be very minimal because that offense is not good. They're not going to be on that other half of the field for most of the game. Whereas the Chiefs will probably be in the red zone just about every drive of every football game.
Yeah.
And when they're in leads, why put all the weight on Patrick Mahomes? Give it to Pacheco. And because how good that defense was last year, the surprise of the season, how they were just phenomenal. They essentially won them a Super Bowl. And so it's not going to be on defense. Like, defense is not going to have the ball a lot. It's going to be on the offense, and they're going to be winning games, giving it to Pacheco at the goal line. So that's why I have Pacheco. I'm going to jump to my receiver, and then I'll jump to yours. This guy is going to come from the worst team in 2023. Which you're like, I go from the best team to the worst team, but this guy has some major opportunity this year with a coach that we both love. He's had a wide receiver one season in the past. He joins a new team, a team that has hopefully a developing quarterback, and I'm talking about Diontae Johnson for the Carolina Panthers. Just looking at them holistically, they add Dave Canales as a head coach who has revitalized 2 quarterback careers already, Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, in 2 consecutive seasons. Now he gets Bryce Young. A lot of people were worried about how his freshman year looked, and that is totally true. He looked awful. This offense looked awful. But now they get an improved offensive line. They signed Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, helps the offensive line a huge amount. They trade for Diontae Johnson. Now, you look at it, and maybe some people are worried, this receiver room, it's not super great or anything, but it's kind of getting a little crowded. Not really. Xavier Legette, first-round pick, last pick in the first round from this NFL draft. I'm not a believer in him just because he didn't break out till his 5th year at South Carolina. The hit rate of receivers who only have, break out so late in their college career is very low. So I don't expect a lot from him. He's already coming off an injury in training camp. And then you got Grandpa Adam Thielen, who were like, I mean, he is old. He's on one leg. He's walking with the crane when he runs routes. But even with that, like to help Diontae Johnson's case, Adam Thielen was a wide receiver, a top 10 wide receiver through the first half of the season before he started slowing down. I had him in fantasy leagues. He was a waiver wire pickup, and he was phenomenal. And that's Adam Thielen, 33, 34-year-old Adam Thielen. We're talking about a guy in his prime in Diontae Johnson. And then the only other wide receiver that kind of can cause maybe some questions is Jonathan Mingo. He was their second-round pick from last year, played quite awfully. I'll give you the stat here. I mean, and against man coverage, Jonathan Mingo was 106th amongst wide receivers. And that was right behind Quentin Johnston, who was also quite awful. So Jonathan Mingo doesn't incite any fear in me, so I'm not worried about him there. If you look at diving into Adam Thielen more, he received 137 targets last year. If Diontae Johnson gets that role for the Carolina Panthers, he's going to get 160 targets with over 100 catches. I have no doubt about it. And with Dave Canales and helping this offense grow, we saw Mike Evans last year be phenomenal. He's always been phenomenal, but people were worried about his age. Now you get a younger guy who's going to get a lot of catches. Bryce Young is not one of those Josh Allens that launches the ball 40 yards down the field. Bryce Young is very check it and hit them slants, hit them curls. And that's why I just love Diontae Johnson. They're on a team that's going to need to throw every game. And they went out and traded for Diontae. I know he was having issues in Pittsburgh, but he gets a quarterback upgrade himself. I'd rather have Bryce Young over Kenny Pickett any day or Mason Rudolph. So Diontae Johnson to the moon. Let him win your leagues. He's going around 7th, 8th round. So you don't have to spend too much capital on him to get a guy who could be your wide receiver one.
No, yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Justin. Looking at Diontae Johnson's career, he's been very consistent in playing full seasons. He's played 16, 15, 16, 17, and 14 games in his 5-year career. Looking at his 5-year career, looking at his best year statistically was 2021. I do believe that was Big Ben's last year in the league. He had over 1,000 yards, 107 catches with 8 touchdowns. The past 2 years, he's failed to go over 1,000 yards, but I do believe that's just a poor quarterback play with Kenny Pickett, who's not really, doesn't really have a strong arm. They had some Mason Rudolphs in there. And so I do like now that he does have an upgrade. At both, you got to think about it this way. In the quarterback, he has a major upgrade, but also in the offensive coordinator and the coaching staff. The last 2 years, he had Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator, who we probably hated Matt Canada more than we hated Arthur Smith in Atlanta. So Matt Canada was so awful at times. But even you mentioned he did fall off really badly with the Steelers towards the end of the last year. Even there was issues with Pickens, and Pickens is still on the team. So I do feel like, this is a new start for Diontae Johnson to kind of take over. And he's going to, he's no doubt he is already the wide receiver one. You mentioned how Thielen was from weeks 1 to 10, one of the best receivers statistically in fantasy. And now that they have Dave Canales there, I feel like it's going to be a nice little balance of Thielen and Diontae Johnson. They don't really have anybody that good at the tight end position. There is, I think it was Ian Thomas or something like that.
Not even mentionable.
Not even mentionable there. So I do feel like, with the Panthers, Dave Canales, we've loved him so much. He has been able to have two good receivers there. When he was in Tampa, really, Mike Evans was able to have a good year. So was Chris Godwin. I feel like these pair, obviously, Thielen is getting older. I think Thielen has a decent season, but it's only because he's able to balance it off and bounce off of Diontae Johnson, who is due for another 1,000-yard season. So definitely love the Diontae Johnson pick. Bryce Young is going to be looking to go into every play. So they're going to be able to develop some chemistry early off the bat. I feel like Diontae Johnson, it won't really take him long to get acclimated into this offense. So I like Diontae Johnson there to be consistent all the way around as long as he's healthy. League winner for sure, because I think that the Panthers are going to be fighting to get into the playoffs, and they're definitely going to need to get their best playmakers involved to win that division.
Yeah, and to add to my love for Diontae, just to kind of highlight it and show you some stats behind my own rankings, Diontae Johnson currently is going at ADP wide receiver 38. I have him as my wide receiver 21. I'm very high on him for this season. And as we were just talking about the tight end room, it is Ian Thomas, Tommy Trimble, and your boy Jatavion Sanders from Texas.
Ooh, okay.
So a really young rookie who has some possible promise, and then two guys who haven't panned out very well. So tight end room's not. I honestly don't think any of the pass catchers for Carolina has me worried about Diontae Johnson's volume. So, but yeah. So what do you got though at your wide receiver?
So my one, it's a little basic. It's a little like, okay, but I'm gonna go with Garrett Wilson as a league winner, Justin. Here, okay. Last year he had 1,000 yards receiving. And that's with quarterbacks like Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, and Tim Boyd. I mean, come on, those are quarterbacks that are not going to compare to the Hall of Fame status of Aaron Rodgers, who will be returning this year, who I'm a little down on with his injury. I'm a little worried, but I do feel like he's going to eventually be able to play the full season. And Justin, looking at this depth chart from last year, the second best receiver in yards for the Jets was Tyler Conklin, who we did talk about a couple weeks ago, very sleeper. Breece Hall was third there in receiving. We look at what they have now, Justin. What the Jets have now. They do have Big Mike Williams, who's coming off injury, who we like. Alan Lazard, who's very inconsistent last year. I do think that he has a better season with Rodgers, who he's very familiar with. Right. And so I feel like with Rodgers being back, that ultimately boosts his status. And I just love, the way Garrett Wilson has been able to just play with all the noise in New York. They've had very lackluster, terrible offenses there. We've never been a believer in Zach Wilson, but still, Garrett Wilson was still been able to put 1,000-yard season. I do believe he was the rookie of the year 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So that's something to consider going into this year. It's looked like he has a jersey number change, Justin. He's no longer number 17. He's number 5. And so he did have 95 catches. Not bad with those three awful quarterbacks. He only had 3 touchdowns. So I do believe that Garrett Wilson is motivated to hit over 5, if not double-digit touchdown seasons. And I love the way that the Jets are kind of the sleeper team of the season. Some people, I've listened to a lot of analysts that are thinking they are going to make the playoffs. Some analysts are very down. So I feel like the Jets are kind of the dark horse to make the playoffs. They are in a tough division, Justin, so they're going to need to come out the bat. And I feel like, week one, like they play the 49ers. I believe that they might go down in that game big, but hey, Rodgers is still going to look for his guys. And I think that Garrett Wilson's going to have that game where they're going to be playing catch up. And I do think that's going to be set the tone for the season. They're going to play the Bills twice, the Dolphins twice. They might split the season matchup with the Patriots. So I feel like that's going to involve a lot of passing. Also, not to mention Breece Hall is going to get in, his rushing is going to get his. But there's going to be a lot of passing from behind, I feel like, in a lot of the games this year. That's going to be gold, nothing but gold for Garrett Wilson. End of the season, they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot as well. They're going to be fighting for that division, for even just second place in that division. Rodgers hasn't played football in a year. He's going to want to get his feet going with his new stud receiver, Garrett Wilson. So I feel like what we thought was going to happen last year is going to happen this year. This is going to be his third season out of Ohio, maybe his third or fourth season out of Ohio State. So I feel like he's going to start to stride and hit his prime. We've seen guys like Jefferson and Jamar Chase kind of showed early success off the bat. Garrett Wilson's been able to do that, but now it's time for his dominant number one season, wide receiver one season. And so, hey, when you have a Hall of Fame quarterback throwing you the football,
right.
Nathaniel Hackett is going to need to prove that, hey, he needs to keep his job, as well as Robert Saleh. These two, coaches are, I would say, they're fighting for their job this year. Yeah. So if Garrett Wilson is not having a good season, they're both out. So you have to believe that, the sense of urgency is there for Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, and the thing you mentioned that kind of clues me in, like Aaron Rodgers, right, is the quarterback now. What a massive 1 million times upgrade over Zach Wilson and the rest of that gang there. But also, we've seen Rodgers hyper target his number one wide receiver, Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Donald Driver. Mm-hmm. His whole time in Green Bay, he's had a guy that he loves, and Garrett Wilson will clearly be that guy. I honestly am not too worried about the rest of the guys in that receiving room. Besides, you could argue maybe Breece Hall. Like Mike Williams coming off the ACL, he's getting old. I don't have too much worry with that. Alan Lazard, he played really bad last year, and now he does get his quarterback back. The fact that he's familiar with him, has played with him all those years in Green Bay, has me happier with it. They got the rookie, the Yak King, Malachi Corley. Mm-hmm. And my sleeper, Tyler Conklin. But I think there's still enough to go around to make Garrett Wilson a top 5 wide receiver. I mean, and the guys he's going around in fantasy right now, A.J. Brown, Puka, Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson has the highest upside, you could argue, from that. A.J. Brown has to worry about, Devonta Smith, the newly traded Jahan Dotson. Puka Nakua's got Cooper Kupp. Marvin Harrison is a rookie. But, I have high hopes for him, but he's also a rookie. Garrett Wilson has Aaron Rodgers, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the history of the sport. I know he's old, but Rodgers still got it. Camp has been really good from what I hear for Garrett Wilson, and that has me on board as well. But yeah, okay, we'll move to tight end, to our last 2 picks here, and I'll let you finish off with your tight end. Go ahead and share it.
So I'm going to share a guy that actually was a league winner for last year. Obviously, he didn't play week 18, but if you guys have standard leagues, the playoffs always start from week 14 and end somewhere around week 17. And this guy is David Njoku. This guy was no doubt a league winner last year. He'd rather had, in the fantasy playoffs, he'd rather had a touchdown or over 100 yards or both. And his target share was unbelievable, Justin. I mean, looking at his last 4 games, not including the playoff game against the Texans, but the last 4 weeks that he played in the regular season, his targets were all over 5 targets. We're looking at 8, 9, 14 targets in one game. 8. I mean, this guy was unbelievable towards the end of the year. Now, Justin, he doesn't have Joe Flacco. He does have Deshaun Watson, who we're hoping has somewhat of a better year, who was so on and off last year with injuries and that. With this offense, Justin, under Kevin Stefanski, they've always been good, really. And there's no one really there in Cleveland that can challenge David Njoku. And he's 28 years old. This is really like the peak age for tight ends there. He has a good couple more years left in his career. So definitely this is his prime there in Cleveland. Looking at, what he was able to do from week 6 to 17 last year, he was the tight end 1 to finish the year. He didn't even play week 18. They had Flacco. The running game was a little the running game was on and off with Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford. We don't really know what's going to be the running game there in Cleveland this year. There's questions about if Nick Chubb is even going to play up until week 5 or 6. We're not sure if we're going to even see Chubb at all this year. There hasn't really been a status. So the offense kind of remains the same there. The only difference is the quarterback, which I think if you ask our audience here, I think they're going to kind of side with Deshaun Watson over Joe Flacco, who, Joe Flacco was really good. But the fact that Joe Flacco was able to come off the couch and look for David Njoku week in and week out, I mean, it just shows promise there. And if there's something were to happen to Deshaun Watson, hey, we have Jameis Winston, who isn't that bad of a thrower. The guy can throw for 300 yards with 3 interceptions. It doesn't hurt the value of Njoku at all, Justin. So, Njoku, he's looking to have a breakout season from weeks 1 to finish the year. He even had an incident where he burned part of his face and still was able to go out there and perform at a high level. And so that, to me, already understands the character of Njoku. And if he's able to, if there's some, unfortunate reason where he gets a knick-knack injury, I'm still confident that he's going to be able to go out there and perform because of his character. And so I love Njoku to be a league winner. I'm very confident that the Browns are always going to be in the thick of it. The record, if not, they're going to be able to put up points. They're always a solid team since Stefanski has been there as the head coach. And so Njoku, I like him. His ADP is a little questionable there. I don't know if a lot of of our audience are confident in him at tight end, but I am very confident he repeats his league winning abilities and able to perform the back half of the season. That Browns offense, we're not really sure who we're going to see, but one thing that remains consistent is I'm very confident that passing, they do have Amari Cooper and Judy, who I like Judy. He's going under the radar this year. A lot of people are not, whatever. But hey, Njoku is that alpha at the tight end position there. There's no one that's going to challenge him. So I do like Njoku to have a pretty good season as well as a league-winning season.
Yeah, well, to me, Njoku, people are worried about Deshaun Watson as the quarterback this year because it was with Flacco where Njoku was really, really impressive, was by far the tight end 1. But it shows in his ADP. I think his ADP is actually pretty low. He's going at tight end 10 after being the tight end 1 for most of the season last year. That has me really interested. This is his breakout. I know it took him like 5 years to really have a breakout. But he's in an offense. I love Stefanski run offense. They're not going to be a run first team with Jerome Ford and Donta Foreman and whoever else they have there. And that has me excited. I'm actually pretty happy if you can get Njoku. If you don't get one of these top, 4 to 5 guys, why not wait, a few more rounds to get a guy like Njoku who we've seen the ceiling. We've been talking about ceiling. That's what league winners kind of bring. And we saw it last year from Njoku for a really extended portion of time. So I think Njoku's a good pick there. For my tight end, I have a guy who really has not shown top 5 tight end, upside before. We've seen some flashes in his rookie season last year, but he's tied to a quarterback that's top 3 to me in the NFL. I'm talking about Dalton Kincaid for the Buffalo Bills. Kincaid he was a very solid tight end last year. He was the tight end 10 he was a top 10 tight end from week 17 through the rest of the season. So he has that top 10 potential. We didn't see too many massive performances like we saw from Njoku, that one game from Ingram or Laporta, but Kincaid is just tied to Josh Allen in an offense where they lose Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, 317 vacated targets from the Buffalo Bills, and they're still in that Joe Brady offense, which loves to target the tight end. And people who are worried about Dawson Knox, don't be. For one, he's not as good as Dalton Kincaid. For two, Joe Brady's offense is 12 personnel, which will have both tight ends on the field. We won't see one off or one, we won't see Dawson Knox on the field while Kincaid is not. And so Kincaid, though, first round pick talent. People were looking at him, last year in drafts, and it ended up being Sam Laporta. I think Kincaid's going to want to, prove himself to be in that tier, in that, conversation. And he's going in a grouping now at the tight ends in fantasy where there's Laporta, Travis Kelce, Andrews, Trey McBride, Kittle, and he's falling around the bottom portion of that. why not wait a little bit and get a guy who I think has upside to be the number one tight end in fantasy? It kind of makes me think of, if the Bills want to be like the Chiefs to beat the Chiefs, why not have a similar formula where your number one target is a very, very good tight end, and that is Dalton Kincaid with Josh Allen and Pat Mahomes with Travis Kelce. I'm not saying Kincaid is Travis Kelce, but it's also only year 2 of Dalton Kincaid, when Kelce didn't break out for his first few seasons. So I'm really high on Dalton Kincaid. And I think if you can get him at tight end 5 or 6, why not wait till round 6 to do that instead of having to jump on my bust pick from last episode, Sam Laporta, in the mid to early 3rd round?
No, yeah, Justin, I want to kind of finish on what you said there. You mentioned Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. This actually reminds me a little bit when Tyreek Hill left, kind of in the similar situation that Stephon Diggs has left. And Patrick Mahomes was able to go out there and win the MVP without Tyreek Hill, was able to go out there and win 2 Super Bowls. Travis Kelce obviously had somewhat of a little bit on and off year. That's another story for another day. But I like Dalton Kincaid, and this player, Dalton Kincaid and Devontae Smith, are 2 players that I'm going to be looking at you on draft day. I'm going to be looking at you, Justin. I'm going to say, don't you dare draft that guy. I'm going to be looking at you, and I'm going to mouth and say, don't draft him. Don't draft him, because Dalton Kincaid is going to have a breakout season. I'm not too worried about Dawson Knox there, because Dawson Knox was the starter for a couple years, had some good games, had some games, but we haven't even heard from Dawson Knox. He hit the waiver wire so quickly. And so Dalton Kincaid, though, is the established tight end there. They picked him in the first round last year. He's only 24 years of age there. And last year, he had a pretty slow start. I think he was hurt, but he also had a slow start there. And towards the end of the season, the Bills had a little bit of an identity crisis offensively. Stephon Diggs fell from the face of the earth, didn't even have 100 yards to kind of like in the last couple games of the year. And I feel like this year now, Joe Brady and that offensive staff, as well as Josh Allen, they're looking to have a more of explosive offense. They don't have a number one alpha wide receiver yet. They have some guys there that could be good, but I think the number one pass catcher in Buffalo is Dalton Kincaid. And if you want to add more to it, I think James Cook is the second best pass catcher, along with Keon Coleman. They're kind of tied there. And so I feel like Dalton Kincaid has number one receiving, share of the offense. So that's going to be Josh Allen's now to go-to guy there. And I feel like this offseason, the Bills, I believe that they have implemented a better offensive, scheme to get their guys the football there. And like you mentioned, they want to challenge the Chiefs. They're eyeing the Chiefs, not the Ravens, obviously not the Texans yet, but they're eyeing the Chiefs. They want to mirror the Chiefs as best as they can. And what do the Chiefs do? They have their number one guy in Travis Kelce, who's been there for many, many years, who's a no doubt Hall of Famer. They want to establish something like that there. So in order for Kincaid to make his Travis Kelce, esque resume, he's going to need to have his tight end one season there. I love Dalton Kincaid. If you get him in the rounds 5 or 6, I think that's a steal already, in my opinion, because of his share in that offense. And so definitely, Justin, if you pick him, there's going to be some problems. Not to play. Dalton Kincaid is going to have a good season, though. I believe that.
No, and you, like, as you mentioned, that the Kelce kind of came down last year from what we saw. That's a guy who's over 30. What is he, 32, 33 years old? Kincaid, as you mentioned, is 24. He's not even hit his prime yet, and he's with a guy who loves to throw the rock. So I'm, hugely in on him. And in the last, 4 or 5 years, the top 2 tight ends besides Laporta's season last year was Kelce and Mark Andrews, who are both number one targets on their team. Dalton Kincaid is one of very few tight ends who has the ability to be the number one target on their football team, and he's in one of the best offenses in the league. So I'm glad we're aligned there with Dalton Kincaid, and he is my tight end league winner. But yeah, so that's 8 names we have there for you guys. Dalton Kincaid. Oh my gosh, why am I'm like blanking all of a sudden?
There's so many good players, Justin. These are league winners. These are the guys who win this championship. It's a lot. It's a lot of fantasy points.
Okay, just to re-announce it to everybody throughout the episode, we did our tight end league winners: Dalton Kincaid, Devon Njoku. Wide receivers, he had Garrett Wilson. I got Diontae Johnson. Running back, I have Isiah Pacheco. He's got Devon Achane. And at QB, you had Justin Fields, and I got Kyler Murray. Guys that, and besides maybe Garrett Wilson, who's going in that early second round, guys that you don't have to pick up. You don't have to go spend the biggest draft capital on in order to get a guy who could win you your league. You know, I think it's super important that you keep these guys on your radar, and have them highlighted and ready to go on draft day. And as Janelle mentioned, I will have them this Saturday or this Sunday when our main league draft happens in person. Super excited about that. We might have to take some pictures to show Dwayne Nation. I think I mentioned it maybe a month ago in a PSA. We need in-person drafts. They're the most fun thing in the world. They're so awesome. And this weekend, yeah, I got a bunch of drafts. I know this is right this weekend. Next weekend are Draft Central, and we're very excited about it. So make sure you watch this episode before you have your drafts this weekend to help you pick and start your season off right. So thank you guys for listening. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share. Let's build up Dwayne Sports together, guys. We need to get to the 100 subscriber, then to the 1,000 subscriber, then to the million. You get where I'm going.
Trillion.
Right, trillion. Yeah, let's get everybody on this planet to subscribe to Dwayne Sports. That would be awesome. But yeah, thanks, guys. Stay tuned, and as always, send us out.
Yo, Dewey Nation, thanks for listening. We love you guys. Hey, fantasy football is here. We're going to be talking about fantasy as much as we can all season long to provide you the best possible way to win you your championships. This is the league winning episode, and Justin and I are league winners. We've had history of winning leagues. So, hey, what better way to come to two league winners who know what they're talking about? And just stay tuned all season, guys. Dewey Nation, we love you guys. We'll see you next episode. Justin, Dewey Nation, as always, peace.